Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise, getting straight to the crucial insights from some really compelling stories. Today, we're plunging into Jadugoda. It's India's very first uranium mine. And it's a place that kind of embodies a chilling truth, really. The hidden cost of national power, often paid in local lives, and, well, contaminated land. We're going beyond just the headlines today to really unpack this profound dilemma. Our sources for this deep dive are pretty extensive. We've got excerpts from a comprehensive look at Jadugoda, uranium mining's human and environmental toll, and we've added to that with insights from independent surveys, reports from activists, and even an Oscar shortlisted documentary. So our mission here is to understand this really complex story. You've got strategic national development on one side, clashing with these profound local human and environmental costs on the other. It's yes, a vital national resource, absolutely. But the local impact is deeply challenging. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Jadugoda, it's in East Singhbhum in Jharkhand. This is where uranium deposits were first discovered in India way back in 1951.
That's right.
And then mining officially kicked off in 1967.
Yeah, making it instantly the oldest uranium mine in the country. And what truly stands out, I think, about this operation is just the sheer scale. We're not talking about just one single hole in the ground here. It's much bigger. The mine complex involves multiple underground mines. There's Jadugoda itself, Bhatin, Narwapahar, Turamdih, Bagjata, Mahuldih.
Wow, quite a few.
Yeah, and then there's also an opencast mine at Banduhurang. So it's a massive industrial footprint, really, much larger than you might first picture.
And its importance to India's energy landscape is, well, undeniable, right?
Absolutely.
This complex supplies up to, 25% of the uranium needed for India's nuclear power.
That's the figure often cited. It supports about 5,000 megawatts of energy generation.
Right. And what's also quite striking, I found, is that one of India's few underground physics labs was set up right here.
Yes, in 2017.
At a depth of 555 meters.
Yeah.
And, having such a high-tech facility like that within a zone facing such profound environmental concerns, it really highlights the layers of complexity we're talking about. It's quite the contrast. The sheer industrial footprint is huge. We get that. But like with so many resource extraction stories, that footprint often comes with a pretty significant environmental cost. So let's turn our attention now to the specific challenges Jadugoda faces environmentally.
Okay. And this brings us, I think, directly to the critical issue of waste management. A really significant problem is how the waste slurry, they call it tailings, how that's handled.
How is it handled?
Well, it's often just stored in open ponds, sometimes unlined ponds.
Open, unlined. Wow, okay. And the consequences of that kind of storage must be stark.
They are. You get dust storms, for one, carrying radioactive particles blowing around.
Right.
And then during the monsoons, you get seepage. Water leaks out.
And where does that go?
It leads to contamination of both the groundwater that people might rely on and local rivers. Specifically, the Subarnarekha River has been mentioned frequently.
The Subarnarekha, okay.
And the contamination doesn't just stop at the water sources. It really extends directly into people's daily lives. Villagers living nearby, they report inhaling uranium dust and also radon gas.
Radon. That's the radioactive gas from uranium decay, right?
Exactly. Naturally released. And even more chilling, perhaps, is we've seen reports of local use of radioactive residues.
Yeah. How?
In road construction.
Yeah.
Even in building houses. So people are being exposed directly, right, within their homes and communities.
That's incredibly concerning. So, okay, what does this exposure, this contamination actually mean for the people living there? What are the health impacts?
Well, studies have documented a really frightening array of health risks.
Like what?
We're talking increased rates of congenital deformities, miscarriages, infertility, various types of cancers, respiratory illnesses,
Oh, man.
and sadly, early deaths among residents.
You hear these personal accounts, too, and they gut you. Like Agno Murmu, a villager, quoted as saying, "They took away my land, but they gifted me with cancer."
Yeah. That quote is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It just cuts right to the heart of this dilemma. It's truly heartbreaking to hear things like that directly.
And there's another observation from a Dr. Jadugora that really highlights the sort of insidious ongoing cycle of exposure.
What did Dr. Jadugora observe?
He noted something like laborers were given only one uniform a week.
Just one, for a whole week.
Apparently. And then he said, wives or daughters wash it in contaminated ponds. A vicious cycle.
Oh, wow. So the contamination spreads right into the family through the laundry, essentially.
Exactly. It shows how it extends beyond just the direct workers, right into the heart of the community, trapping families in this cycle of exposure.
So beyond these immediate terrible health concerns, what about the wider ripple effect on the communities? How has this impacted the social and economic fabric,
Yeah.
especially for the indigenous populations there?
Right, because this whole situation also forces us to confront this question of social justice, particularly for the Adivasi communities. I mean, they've given up precious farmland, forests, things that were absolutely central to their traditional way of life.
Land they depended on.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And incredibly, even sacred sites like their Jharkhand Grove, which is a sacred tribal grove,
Yeah.
it's now literally submerged under these vast tailings ponds.
Waste
ponds.
Submerged. Some sacred site.
They've gone under the waste.
That's devastating. And that displacement, the environmental damage, it must directly impact their livelihoods, too.
Oh, completely. We're seeing deforestation, contaminated soils.
Yeah.
And that has severely impacted traditional jobs, like beedi leaf harvesting.
Beedi leaves for the local cigarettes?
Exactly. It's essentially taking away their means of survival, these traditional ways of making a living.
So health problems, loss of land, loss of sacred sites, loss of livelihood.
And there's more. What's equally striking and really tragic is the profound social stigma that has emerged from this.
Stigma.
Well, these increased rates of infertility and birth defects we talked about, they've led to women being called banj, which is a term meaning sterile or barren.
Oh, no.
And subsequently, some have been abandoned, ostracized by their families or communities.
Just abandoned because of health issues likely linked to the mine?
It's a reported consequence, yes. A tragic social fallout beyond just the physical ailments affecting their very place in society.
So, given all of this, the health crisis, the environmental damage, the social impact, how has this been addressed? What about the authorities? And the operating company, the Uranium Corporation of India Limited, UCIL, is there any accountability?
Well, UCIL's official stance, they maintain that radiation levels are consistently below the regulated limits.
Low limits,
Yeah.
despite the health report.
That's their position. And they tend to attribute adverse reports to what they simply call media hype.
Media hype. Okay, but hang on. If UCL dismisses these concerns as just media hype, our sources also indicate something else, like the fact that villagers still rely on water supplied by UCIL, even after all these years.
That's true. They provide water tankers in some areas.
Right. So what does that reliance really tell us? If the local water is supposedly safe, according to UCIL, why rely on their tankers? It suggests, doesn't it, a deep distrust of their own local environment.
It certainly speaks volumes about their fear or perceived danger regarding their own wells and rivers. Yeah.
Okay, so what about the regulatory side? Has there been any intervention?
Well, stepping back to look at the regulatory landscape, it's also pretty complex. Mining was actually briefly halted back in 2014. There were issues over lease complications.
Halted, okay.
But operations resumed by 2017. And, courts and state bodies have debated safety violations. They've discussed this critical issue of excluding human settlements from areas near the tailings ponds.
Excluding settlements,
Yeah.
which clearly hasn't fully happened based on everything we've heard.
It seems the issue persists, yes. The proximity of villages to the waste ponds remains a major concern.
So let's try and bring these threads together. What does this all mean? Jadugoda, it seems, clearly exemplifies a really profound dilemma.
It really does. I think it's the direct clash between, on one hand, India's crucial national nuclear ambitions, the need for uranium.
Right, the strategic need.
And on the other hand, the health, the ecology, and the livelihoods of the tribal communities who are directly impacted by these operations. It's that core conflict.
And despite its strategic value, it's undeniably clear, isn't it, that serious human and environmental costs persist.
They absolutely do.
The story of Jadugoda really reminds us that national progress can sometimes come at a deeply personal and very local price. This deep dive into Jadugoda, it really brings to light the complex and often hidden costs of national development. It's quite sobering.
It is. And the sources, collectively, strongly, urge us to consider more rigorous oversight, proper remediation of the damage done, and importantly, genuine ongoing community engagement in these kinds of large-scale projects moving forward. not just token consultation.
Right, real engagement. So for you, our listener, here's a final thought to perhaps mull over. How do we, as a society, balance these strategic national needs like energy independence or defense with the fundamental well-being and rights of local communities, especially when the impacts, like here in Jadugoda, are so long-term, often invisible, and can stretch across generations? How do we strike that balance fairly?